Okay, so for my first experiment, this is going to cook outdoor. Like in my previous video, I gutted my grill. That was a gas grill, and I am going to set my Dutch oven in here. So I've got a charcoal chimney, and underneath there is fire going. So I will let those coals burn for a while, and we'll go inside and start the next process. Got the charcoal going now, and now we're going to move inside for the next phase. So what we're going to have is some Salisbury steak, and I've got some other stuff to go for the gravy. But we're going to have some mushrooms and onions in the gravy. And then another skillet, I'll be making some sauteed squash and asparagus. And then I'll also be using some products that are in the refrigerator, such as milk. I'm actually using almond milk for the low carb factor, and a little bit of heavy whipping cream just to make it richer. Before I put the hamburger in, I'll need some type of a fatty source. So whether a person could use olive oil, whatever. I'm going to put some coconut spread on the bottom of the Dutch oven, and I also have some coconut flour. Coconut flour only has 4 carbs, where regular flour has a lot more. So those are things I'm going to be working with today. And I'm going to wash these. Let's see. First, I'll actually wash my hands, and we'll start the hamburger patties while the charcoals are working that fire through. Okay, here I am back, and we are going to make some really small, thin hamburger patties for the Salisbury steak. Real narrow ones. Growing up, my mom would put food on the counter. We only had a small little dog, non-shedding dog, and while I wiped my counter every day and all the time, I'm just a little paranoid about stuff that could be floating in the air. So I tend to use a lot of paper plates. I use them for my table source. So I will start lining this tray up with some little Salisbury steak patties. And this is the first time that I've used the outdoor camp Dutch oven. So today is an adventure for all of us. I've never used coals before. I've never used the Dutch oven before. And my grill that I turned into a charcoal grill, I have not used that one except for as a gas grill. So this is an adventure. We're all going to sink, or we're all going to swim. We're going to find out what happens together. And to be honest, this recipe is another thing that I've never made before. I just know what foods I like. I know what I like that tastes good together. So that's what this is based off of. I know what sounds good in my head, and whether it turns out good or not, well, like I said, I'm going to find out. I don't have any other taste test dummies, any crash dummies here with me to help, but I've got a couple dogs, like I said, 3 dogs, but they can't have onions and mushrooms because that's poisonous to dogs. So I can't even test it out on them. So instead, I took some peanut butter for those guys, and they are enjoying a peanut butter filled toy. So that way I can be doing my thing and not have them barking and under my feet, which happens a lot around here. So this is the last one. When I was a kid, I would eat raw hamburger, and looking back now, that just kind of grosses me out. I can't believe I would eat that as a kid. Kids are so weird in the things they like, but I used to beg my mom, please, just one little bite, and she'd say no. But as sure as she turned her back, I would snatch one. I'm going to wash my hands, and then we'll start the mushrooms. Okay, so these mushrooms, okay, it says I better wash them off before I use them. Sometimes you get them and they'll say that they've already been washed. Those are my favorites. But evidently, that is not the case with these. So, let's just put these little things in here. And I'll get them washed. Here again, I've got my little strainer sitting on a paper plate. I'm telling you, that's the best thing since sliced bread. I think it's even better than sliced bread. So now I'm going to slice up the mushrooms because, like I said before, this is going to go in the gravy along with the onions and milk and the almond coconut flour. I'm not a fancy cook. I'm not, can't lie, presentation is not my top priority. So I do things maybe not in the prettiest way, but by golly, you will never go hungry if you're around me. Because I will find a way to make sure there's food. I do watch a lot of cooking shows. I like to read a lot of different recipes. I think it's important to know what other people think goes good together, and so I can try it and see if I think it goes good together. And sometimes they go good together, and oh, sometimes they don't. I admit I don't have a super fancy palate. I don't have, you know, I'm not one that's going to go out and order something like escargot or or something like that. That's not my style. I'm a very basic when it comes to food, but what I do make, I make it, by golly. Four more to go. Okay, I've got those cut up. I'm not one of those people that's into organic. Like I said, trying to do things that are lower carb, just for trying to avoid sugar and working really hard to avoid things that are already in a process, things that are in a box, or things that are in a can. Really trying to avoid things like that, not because of, not that I think they're horrible for everybody, but obviously I'm not a skinny gal, and one thing I've noticed for me is that when I stick to low carb, low processed foods, that is when I do best. So This may be weird, but I'm going to wash my yellow squash. And when I wash them with a little bit of soap. I know there's all kinds of fancy things out there that people could use. They've got sprays, they've got soaks, they've got, oh my goodness, so much stuff. But when I wash them, I just use a little bit of soap. I figure if soap on my hands is good enough, then soap on the outside peeling of a squash or zucchini or cucumber, that would be good enough for them too. So, like I said, I don't know, that may not be the best way, but it's my way. And you have to know, this is my way, and you have your way, and the next person has their way, and everybody has to do what is best for them. You know, if you don't like yellow squash, and if you don't like asparagus, then by golly, don't make it. Make you something that you like. Something that you feel like goes with Salisbury steak. Some people will want some noodles. Some people may want potatoes. Like I said, this is just some vegetables that I like, and so I'm going to be making, it's just me, but since it is just me, I like to, and I do love to cook. I tend to make a lot, and then that way I have enough for lunch the next day, and then usually another supper and lunch, and then what I do is cook in between there, so that way I'm not eating the same thing 4 meals, or 4 lunch and suppers in a row. But if I cook something in between there, something, again with 4 portions, then I have that supper for that night, and then lunch the next day, and then I'll come back to what I cooked today, and then have that. And these are not going to go out in the Dutch oven. These are actually going to be cooked on a skillet over here on the stove. One more thing to go. I'm going to look out here at the fire on the coals. I still see some flames coming up, and since I am not the expert on charcoal, from everything I hear, there's a fire is supposed to run out before you start using them. So I've got plenty of time to cut this up. I said this is some asparagus. For the temperature whenever I'm cooking, whenever I bought that Camp Dutch oven, in this little book that came with it, it had the temperatures and for how many coals or how many pieces of coal on top or bottom for whatever temperature you're wanting to cook. And so that's what I'm going to be using today. I'm going to cook this around 350 degrees for however long it takes. And you're supposed to renew the coals every hour. So what I did was I made about 30 coals, even though I'm supposed to use 25, just in case I end up needing to do something or something that takes a little longer. But anyway, so that's what I'm following today for this experimental cookout. So I'm going to rinse these off. I strategically placed the phone about 2 or 3 feet from my sink so that I could still talk to you while I'm doing this. I like asparagus. One thing I learned from making